Welcome back, coaches. This is the Football Coaching Podcast. I'm Daniel Chamberlain, co-host here with Joe Daniel, as always.
What's up, Coach?
Well, we're as of recording this, 2, maybe 3 weeks away from fall camp. I saw a lot of people started now, and I'm really confused.
Oh, we start Thursday.
So y'all are like immediately after August 1st. Like we have a coaches
I mean,
meeting.
technically, we could start. I think we could start. We could have started yesterday. I think if we want to be, we just kind of just feel like starting before August 1st is just kind of ridiculous. So, but I think
Now,
legally we can.
When is your
Whatever it is,
first
21
game?
days. We have to get a certain number of days. So we just have to, there are times when we've had to start because we have an earlier game and we have to start before August 1st, which I think is ridiculous to actually force people to start football season. And what traditional week 1 in Virginia has always been the week after Labor Day. So in Virginia for years and years and years, with the exception of Northern Virginia, who's their own state, for the longest time, you didn't start school until the Tuesday after Labor Day, and that was week 1, and so it made no sense to start in July. And if you played 0 week, you were only playing, you were probably playing like September 1st or something a lot of times. So, but they've added -1 week and it's gotten earlier and school's starting earlier. Like now they go back to school on like, I don't know, the 18th, I don't know the days, but it's middle of August. And they get out earlier, I guess, but
do y'all play on the 23rd? Is that your first game?
no, we play the following week, I believe, this year.
So we start on the 30th as well. And that's
we play 0 week, which is we play the 30th, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. That's weird. Well, we don't start until the 12th. So I still have, I guess, as of tonight, 13 days till we start practice. So it's very strange.
Yep.
It seems really off, but that's what it is. So 2 weeks to practice and then we play a game. Should be great. I guess 3 weeks, 3 full weeks. Yes, so I'm really pumped about that. The jitters are starting to set in with the switching from defense to offense.
Right.
And new coaching staff and new players. And we've had a ton of things that have kept me out of the coach's office. So between military and unfortunately, we've had some deaths in the family. So we've hit our mid-30s, my wife and I. And so we're starting to watch our grandparents get old. And so this stuff keeps you out of the coach's office, So I'm getting super worried about like having everything ready to go, but I know it'll work itself out. Marty,
yep.
Coaches meetings are planned and start working with the assistants and stuff. So we'll be fine. It's just, I'm sure everyone gets the butterflies. Mine are just a little different this year. So
they do. I mean, and they used to. Again, I think that all of this stuff is kind of foolish. There's these special measuring sticks of when it's time to leave the game. But I've heard a lot of coaches say, if you aren't nervous for that first day of practice, or if you aren't nervous before a game, you should probably get out. And it's like, you don't feel those butterflies. It's like, I mean, I'm not nervous for the first day of practice because I know how it's going to go. So there's nothing to be nervous about for me. I'm excited about it, sure, but it's a different thing, I guess, at this point for me. I don't have those nerves, but most people do, and I did most of my career. So yeah, it's perfectly normal.
For sure. I'll jump right into our level ups here because we took a vacation kind of this weekend, and so that's my level up. My wife, as y'all know, is a physical therapist, and she does. She is a teacher, staff member for ICE, which is Institute of Clinical Excellence, and so they teach a lot of medical stuff because medical they have CEUs. They have to get so many every year to stay up to keep their licensure or whatever, and so it's a lot easier to sell medical training because they have to go get medical training. Everyone that's in the medical field is going to have to go out and get some type of a continuing ed unit. Unlike football, so I keep trying to mimic what they're doing. I keep thinking of ways to mirror it and build a football school like that, But we're not forced
Mhm.
to go do that stuff, so it's a little harder. Anyway,
Texas is.
she did a class in the Denver area, and so it was close enough. We just took the whole family, and what that really meant for me was about 12 and a half hours of driving on Thursday night. It fit right in between all of our practices, which are summer pride stuff, which was great. So 12 and a half hours driving Thursday night, and then Sunday the same thing. And she worked till like 4 p.m. Sunday, and then we just drove it on home.
Right.
But the time in between was really, really nice. It was nice to just get away. I love that area. I love Colorado. It's like the place you struggle to go there and visit because you may not come home. It might be the time you're like, nah, that's it. We're just going to live here now. Not enough rain in that Denver area with the old rain shadow effect off the Rockies and all that. So I would have to move west into the mountains, but man, it is gorgeous. So that's what we did. We just took the family, had that last little hoorah before season really steals me away, and had a really good time.
Yeah, I've been to Colorado once, and it is beautiful. And went to Denver, and I would love to go back. It's been about 10 years now, but I did go to the airport though recently,
Right.
which I don't know what that counts for. You can still see the mountains though. You can see the mountains from everywhere. So
Yeah.
there you go.
I wish there was a spring hunt of some kind in Colorado, because being a hunter and a football coach, they just, you really get caught up trying to do both. So kind of stinks.
I haven't had that issue. The hunting is not conflicted with my football time. It's actually, I think, why I don't hunt is it just was too much, the travel on a Saturday. We had Saturday morning practice, so like I wouldn't be able to hunt Saturday morning, and then it was like, all right, it's just not worth it because we had to go a couple hours to where we hunt. So I just dropped out after middle school, pretty much. So anyway, my level up's basically, we just got back from a vacation. We were in the Outer Banks for a week, and I did not do any work. I did not have the option if I wanted to, because our internet was terrible. For some reason, Outer Banks doesn't have 5G, at least where we were. So I couldn't even log it. Couldn't even get on my phone. Like even the phone was like just spotty and bad, and it was all weird. But it turned out, that's a blessing. Like it's like, all right, well, I can't work, so just basically shut it down for a full week. And so that was great. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It's good timing. We normally go earlier. 4th of July can be really difficult down there, but and usually when we go, it's like 95 degrees every day. It was like 80 something every day. It was great. They said it was going to rain every day. It didn't. Get a little shower here and there. So it'll just be in 7 days, and the timing is great because you come back. And like I said, we start on Thursday, so I've got a couple days here to catch up business wise, and then we've got practice starting Thursday. So, but it was nice to have that week off before it. Not traditionally, what my old head coach used to do was we would always give everyone off that week before that last week, which would be about right now, and we would always give everyone off that week from everything, and so we would do vacations and stuff then. So it kind of felt right doing that.
The people who prioritize getting their coaches out of there that last little bit, like that's the answer. It bugs me when there's this expectation that coaches have to start their season in a spring ball, right? Like, oh, you can't miss any days. We started spring ball in whatever March or April, and now it's football season, guys, all the way till you're either win the last game or don't, right? Like, there's got to be breaks. Working with you and Kenny on these podcasts and stuff, I've really gained a respect for guys who have that mentality. I think Kenny's like, dude, we take 3 different weeks off from the time we start summer pride to this time we start the season because Jesus Christ, you don't. Those 3 weeks aren't going to be that many games for the players nor the coaches. Like, let kids be kids, let adults go be adults, and man, it's really nice. So kudos to, if your coach still does that, great, and if it's the old one, then kudos to him too.
Yeah, it's just I can't imagine doing it. I wouldn't do it at this point. There was a decade of my life or more where I was in the office whether kids were there or not. I was in the office, it didn't matter. I was going to be at work. I was going to try to be the first one there. And we didn't win any games. Like, that didn't win any games for us. Actually, I won a whole lot more games since then. And so it's just that it's like when you talked about Bill Blankenship having that realization that like we have to do Saturday practice. Like, well, we don't do Saturday practice. Like, all right, we'll try it. Probably thinking like, but week 3, when this thing's in the tank, we're all coming in on Saturday, and then you get to week 3 and you're like, yeah, you know what? Didn't need it. I compare it very much to the 90-minute practice plan. Everybody goes, you can't get anything done in 90 minutes. It's like, you can if I tell you got 90 minutes to get it done.
Yep.
You'll find a way, and you'll start cutting out the stuff that you don't need. And our head coach has always, and the last few head coaches that I've worked for have always kind of prioritized that. Like, there was always a schedule of who's staying that day. Everybody else leave. Once workouts are done, this is the coach that's going to stay to wait for people to get picked up. One coach has it, and then of course the head coach always ends up staying anyway. But one coach gets assigned to it, and then everybody else go home. And I take that very seriously. I go home. And then you have, all right, I need somebody to be here. We're gonna work out Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Who's going to be here on Mondays? Who's going to be here on Tuesdays? Who's going to be here on Thursdays? Okay, great. We've got a schedule. Head coach is going to be there, all of them. Not all, but most, and that's what's on their plate. But then it's the same thing. Dead period. We're off. We're not. God knows we're not trying to sneak any extra practices in, but we're certainly, we're not scheduling a week full of meetings or something either. If you take a vacation, get out, get gone. We're not doing every we don't do 7-on-7 every Saturday like we used to do anymore. It's just, like I said, I did that for years, and those were some of the worst teams I coached. I honestly, and some of the most miserable seasons that I had, not because we were losing, because I've had losing years where I love the kids and I love coming to work, and they just, we weren't as good as whatever. I wasn't as good a coach, but those years get long and miserable when you're forced marched to be at work every day. And some people love doing that. God bless you. Do it. Like, if this is what you love to do is be in, if what you love to do is be at the field house and be working on football or be breaking down film every single day. And I mean, obviously I do football, 5 days a week anyway. So, or 6 days a week usually. So that's a thing. But if you love doing that, that's great. As long as, like, when you're young, go nuts. You're not married. You're not going to have kids. Go nuts. Do football all the time. If you're older, you're married, you got kids, and that's what you love to do, just make sure that, like, it's not, that becomes an addiction, like, or an escape or whatever. And sometimes I feel like that. Some coaches who are just like, that's what this is like, fall in the door, everything. It's like, you're 45 years old. Like, what's your wife doing? I don't know. Well, I I mean, maybe she wants you gone. I don't know, but make
Well,
sure it's not at the detriment, because quite honestly, there's not that much to get done. You're probably wasting time.
yeah. I've joined, maybe since we talked last, a little Twitter text group for military veterans that are also high school or college football coaches, and it's been pretty neat. So shout out to you guys. Thanks for throwing me in that group. But there's I've seen some job offers and stuff, right? And it's like all these unpaid or very, very terribly paid GA positions or whatever, volunteer positions that even high schools that just require like a lot of time. And the overarching theme is like, well, if you're young, you got to pay your dues. And kind of, you actually kind of just said it too, right? If you're young and you don't have kids, you don't have a family, you know, it's like you're expected to be at the office if you're young. I'll
Yeah,
tell you, like, as a going on my 18th, actually, I just had my 18th anniversary in the military, and something I learned probably about halfway through was like and really in the last 3 or 4 years was like this ultimate respect for my own time and other people's time. Right in the military, we always teach the be there 15 minutes early or you're late. I'm out. That's out the door. If you need me to be at the meeting at 7, tell me at 7. If you need me at the meeting at 10 minutes till, tell me 10 minutes till. But I'm showing up on time. I don't need to be there early. But it's kind of the same thing. And you did mention that as well. It's like when you get told it's time to go home, get the hell out of the office. Go away. But it doesn't matter if you're single, you're married, you got kids, no kids. Like it's time I can't impress upon coaches enough to like take back your time, make people respect your time. The expectation is not that you spend an extra 5 hours at the office or whatever every week. You're not. It's not doing anything. Now, if you're sitting down with a coordinator, getting better at football, learning how to do your job better, by all means. But Joe, you said it. You're probably wasting time if you're just stuck there.
probably.
So it doesn't matter what your marital status is. Make people respect your time, respect other people's time, and quit doing work for free. Like, what is this
Yeah,
world?
and I think that's really important. Like when I said, if you're younger and whatever, and you love doing it, by all means, you have no other responsibilities. You've got your 8 hour a day work job, and this is your release. Like, great. That it's better than a lot of things you could be doing, but don't do it for free just because you don't have to pay your dues.
Right.
Because let me tell you what happens when you pay your dues. You move, your stipend doesn't go up until you become a head coach. All the assistant stipends are the same. Some places might have coordinator stipends, but your stipend stays the same. Maybe you get a coordinator position, right? Well, pay your dues to get your coordinator position, I guess, but like there are certain things like the young guy on staff, it shouldn't be pay your dues. It's like responsibilities. It's like I'm coordinator. I practice. I do the practice plan. I do the game plan. I do all these things. They take a lot of time too. Like young guy, you don't have to do practice plan. You don't have to do game plan. You're in charge of equipment. That's not a demotion. That's not but everybody like coordinator, head coach shouldn't be doing all of it. But at the same time, that guy, it's not paying your dues. I don't go, well, I've got 4 guys on staff. I've got a offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach, and young guy. Young guy, you're in charge of all the crap that we did for 10 years of our career. No, we divide that up evenly, and the fact that young guy doesn't have all of the head coach responsibilities and doesn't have all of the coordinator responsibilities means, yeah, he gets a couple more of the, he's the equipment guy or he's the, something like that. Or he's, but it's not, it shouldn't be a pay your dues type of thing. It's just, you shouldn't have, what I hated was, and we get started on this episode. What I hated was when a staff would hire, and staffs do hire, but I've been in places where you're the young guy and nobody tells you what to do, and you've never been on this staff before, or maybe been on any staff before, and so you don't know what to do, and so you're just the lazy guy. And it's like, I'm not lazy. I, but I'm also not just going to tear into things to see what happens. Like, how do things work here?
Yeah.
What do you need me to do? There should be assigned responsibilities, and they should be fairly equitable. But some of them, yeah. Like, listen, young guy. I know, I get it, that all the coordinator stuff seems fun because I get to call the plays on Friday night. Okay, it's a freaking arts and crafts festival in here on Sunday night. Okay, I'm cutting up wristbands. I have mastered Excel, making play sheets, making scripts, and making all this stuff. I spend all this time making practice plans and scripts, and I get out to the field, and nobody's got one with them. Oh, I didn't know there was. There's been one every single day for years. We've got it. Like, trust me, it's not all, Now, if your coordinator just wanders out there to see what happens, like, I agree, he shouldn't get to call plays on Friday night. I run a freaking arts and crafts festival
Absolutely.
every week.
I look forward to it. Let's talk about some football here. Before we do, you want to pay the bills?
Yeah, you can go to joedanielfootball.com/rules and get access to 40 Coach Simple rules that will help you win a football game. As you're getting into the season, you're looking for those non-negotiables. You're looking for those things that those kids have to do to play for you. You might have 11 good ones, and the 12th one's going to get on the field soon. And he needs to know the bare minimum so that he can play. Especially you guys, youth, middle school. It's about getting kids playing time as much as it is. Obviously, we want to teach them football. We want them to have fun. We want them to win. And we don't know what a sixth grader is going to look like in 6 years. So we better get him out there. And so how do we get him enough to survive and to thrive even? So we talk about the non-negotiables. We talk about practice planning. We talk about the Coach Simple philosophy. 40 Coach Simple rules for coaches who want to win more football games. Go to joedanielfootball.com/rules.
Awesome. Athletic Speed Movement at athleticspeedmovement.com. We've taken Del Basquet's 46-ish years of speed and agility training, and we've given it to you in a very simple to ingest, simple to regurgitate training experience to get your guys faster, quicker, anywhere on the football field. It is not track speed. If you're looking for A skips, B skips, C skips, and all of this high knees, and you're not going to find it here. Okay. Will this help your track athletes? Absolutely. I think it will help them run faster, but it is not going to teach them any of the high knees crap, which, by the way, I think I made mention a couple times on here now. I watched the world title champions in USA females track, and not a single knee went above a belt buckle. So I just call it for the flamingos, literally for the birds.
Do what you do on a football field. Do what you do on a track.
There you go. So
Okay.
it is
probably fine for the high jumper, for the hurlers.
There you go. Sport specific speed for you and your team. athleticspeedmovement.com. Yeah, let's move on here. Question 1. We're talking about trimming down our defensive playbook. I know last week we talked offensive playbook, all the things you need to keep. And I think defense is a little bit different, right? You don't, I know that Joe thinks that the defense asks the questions, so you need to carry enough questions to stump the chump, if you will, on the other side. But you can't have so many questions that you are confusing your own kids. So what are the must keeps in our defensive playbook, Joe?
You need one thing in your defensive playbook. Quite honestly, if we talk about things you have to have, now this doesn't go for NFL or Division One. If you're high level, if you're competing for a state title right now, but if we're talking about bare minimum that you need to have, it is a base front, It is a base coverage. It is a base defense. If you have a good base defense with good underlying principles, which is you have so what you must have more in defense, because your base defense can defend everything. Some things it defends better. Some things it has weaknesses. You talk about a 4-2-5 cover 3 or a 4-4 cover 3. Doesn't matter what you want to call it. We'll just change the names of the outside linebackers, makes them feel faster. Call them safeties. Where's the weakness? Well, in the base front, there's a weakness in the B gap, weak side B gap bubble. They can run ISO there. They can run whatever. Okay, so there's a weakness there. It's inherent to it. But as we always say, if the linebacker fills that and the defensive end does a good job of squeezing his man, how big is the gap? If the linebacker hits, say it's an ISO, like an old school ISO in there, the linebacker fills it, the gap is filled, and then the ball bounces. Cover 3, does it have a weakness to 4 verts? Absolutely. It certainly does. It doesn't mean that you can't play that, because if you Kirby Smart talked about years ago, if you put 2/3 of your attention to the inside receiver and 1/3 of your attention to the outside receiver as a corner, and the free safety stays in the middle and stays over top and doesn't give it away which way he's going, that's how you play cover 3. Is it perfect? No. Your linebackers have to have good seam drops or good hook drops. Can a curl flat concept beat cover 3? Yeah, but I can get pressure on the quarterback. There's lots of things. So it can defend everything in some manner. And then with some very light tweaking, it can take away those few areas. But what you need to have more than anything is a base defense that has good underlying principles. And that is that you have a core run fit system. I would say above all else, unlike offense where we can say you need this play, this play, this play. And it's still, when we're talking about the plays you need, you must have an inside run, an outside run, an off tackle run, and a counter. Okay, that's the offensive version of, we need to be able to defend everything as far as the run game goes. We need to be able to attack all the areas the run game goes. It's the same kind of concepts. If you don't have a good run fit system that you can teach your players, then you're gonna lose unless you have better players. You're gonna lose to equal players. So that's where I put the priority is on that, number one. And then you have a coverage that is a sound coverage, that is a solid coverage. Every coverage has strengths and weaknesses. Man coverages can lose to picks and rubs and potentially better athletes. Pattern matches are susceptible to breakdowns, and they have their weaknesses as well. Zone coverages have holes in the zone. They all have their weaknesses, but we have a good coverage of some sort. It can be a cover 3. It can be a split field quarters. It can be whatever. We have a base coverage. We have a base front. We have a solid system of run fits. And we have a clearly defined ASCA for every single position. Alignment, stance, key read, assignment that is geared toward performing our base run fits job and our base coverage job. That our alignment puts us in a position to do both of those. And we weight those in a way that, an inside linebacker is weighted more towards defending the run, to whereas a hybrid outside linebacker, free safety or overhang safety is weighted a little bit more towards a 50-50 of defending the run, forcing the run, and defending the pass. And that, whatever level you're at, those percentages become a little bit more. But we found that the alignments are about the same. So that to me, when we talk about what do you have to have, that's what you have to have. It's not about what's in the playbook.
Yeah, I think that's a very when we talk about keep it simple answer, that's legit, because if you're listening to this so we tell you, hey, you need an A gap blitz and a B gap blitz and a C gap blitz and run cover 3, like That's just not what it is, right? You need to be able to ask the questions right up front, and I think you hammered it there. In fact, I don't really even have anything to add to it, because what do you keep in your playbook is exactly that. So
Yeah, I mean
if
that's and look, I'm not saying that's all that you ever put in the playbook, right?
no,
But that's where we start.
yes,
And then if you get that part right, then we can talk about expansion. But just like the core offensive playbook that we talked about with an inside run, an outside run, an off tackle run, and a counter, and you need some sort of play action. All right, playbook, that's pretty good. Is it perfect? No. Is it great to have some screens? Yes. Is it great to have some quick game? Yes. Do you want to have some drop back passes? Maybe. Do you want to have a draw? Probably. Not unless you can throw it. Then a draw is kind of worthless. But do you want to expand? Do you want to have a second package? Maybe. But is as far as the offense goes, you have to have that down first, or otherwise. And again, there's a different school of thought that does the exact same thing in the pass, where they have the ability to attack all the area, all the coverage weaknesses. So, and that's the base of say an air raid type of deal. But it's still the same concept of we can attack all those weaknesses. With a cover three, we start with, or with a cover three with a defense, we start with, I have to be able to do the basics. And most of our teams that come into JDFB, and quite honestly, if you are coming off of a 0-win, 1-win, 2-win, 3-win season, you're who I'm looking for. You are who we're looking for, because that's what I love to do. That's what I love to. That's who I love to work with. That's who I love to help get over that hump, get into being competitive, get into being a winning football team. And it starts with that, and that's where that's. And if you're a youth or even middle school team, if you can do that, most middle school levels, but not all. But for the most part, middle school and most youth programs, if you can do that, you can be really successful. There are exceptions, but for the most part, you can be really successful doing just that.
Question 2 here, and so now we've kind of mentioned what the have to haves in that playbook. So now when you start building that out, what are the key things you have to build your playbook around?
So we build front, stunt, blitz, and coverage. There's 4 parts to a defensive call. And so what we start to look at now is, okay, what are the weaknesses? I do want to have things as needed. And again, don't chase ghosts. Don't go with we had a coach on Chalk Talk recently who was going through these scenarios of what if this happens and then this happens and this happens, this happens, and I'm like, I've never seen it happen. I understand it could be theoretically possible. I've got a lot of coaches who would love to know how you coached your players to be so focused on doing this one thing that everything else just disappeared in their minds. Because I've never seen it happen. Like, so don't worry about things that could happen. Let's start with the weaknesses. And that's why I think it's important to start with that base, is because you don't know the weaknesses of that base truly until, and the weaknesses of that base are different in different places. Maybe nobody throws 4 verts where you're at, right? You just run cover 3 all day, or your youth team, and nobody throws down the field, and who cares if cover 3 has a weakness to 4 verts? Doesn't matter to you. So nobody ever attacks it. It's not a weakness. A weakness has to be attacked. And that doesn't mean that I'm saying, go out there with just that if you're a high school varsity football team. But I would start there. If I could call base, again, a base, whatever your base is, if I could call that 60 times a game and dominate you and win, great. Wait, why would I do anything else? It's like, why would I do anything but run the ball up the middle if you can't stop it? Just to entertain myself. If I'm getting 8 yards a pop, I'm getting 8 yards a pop. Forget the other stuff. So, but we look at that base defense and we start to look at, okay, what are the weaknesses? And we can go by our own experience, but also, we know the weaknesses, and JDFB, we share the weaknesses. And we've already talked about, if you're in that base 4-2-5, well, the weakness is um, B gap. If you're in a 3-3, it's different now, right? The you can slant and move and change what gap is open. And so the weakness now in the 3-3 becomes, well, if I don't blitz anybody. By the way, the base for 3-3 is not bringing 3 usually. It's usually bringing 4. So you
Right.
generally have to have a stunt package, a blitz package. So in the 3-3, you have to have a stunt package. You have to be able to move guys, and same thing in the 3-4. I mean, you can play 2 gap, but most people don't. So you start to look at what the weaknesses are, and you start to put in calls that take away the weakness. So if I look at the weakness of the um, 4-2-5 or 4-4, what's something that I can do to take away the B gap weakness? What's something I can do to take away the strong A gap weakness against runs up the middle because nobody's there? So I put in an indie front where I have double 2 eyes. I have a weakness to trap, so I have that indie front trapping a 3-tech. So I put in that indie front, so it's harder to trap a 2-eye than it is a 3, significantly harder. Well, I have a weakness to the weak side B gap. So I put in an echo stunt where I bring my defensive end into B gap. I put in a blitz the linebacker to fill that front side A gap on the strong side. I blitz the linebacker to fill that weak side B gap on the weak side. So I put in a blitz. So I've got a couple fronts now. I've got a couple blitzes. I have a weakness, so I can help that weak side B gap weakness by running a G front where I slide my shaded nose out into a 2-eye, and I constrict that weak side B gap a little bit more. So that helps the weakness. I don't put in things just because they sound cool. I'm putting in these base fronts that give me that take away a weakness. In the 3-3 or in the 3-4, where I'm slanting my defensive line, the only weakness that I have is maybe we're not as good slanting as we would be stationary in some situations. And so I put in a shaded front, like a 4 front, so that we can just play from a shade and just go ahead and line up in it. And I like that better against, a dead run situation or something. For whatever reason, I feel like that's a weakness. I can't tell you what all the weaknesses are. I can tell you a pretty long list, and then you've got to decide which ones are which. So we put in some blitzes that fill some areas quicker. We put in some defensive line fronts. We put in some defensive line stunts that move guys a little bit. Maybe you feel like the weakness is your 4-2 front is that your second group of defensive tackles is too small. And so you feel like you need to slant them and move them so that they're not as easy to just tee off on. And so you put those slants in for them. You feel like you have a weakness in the cover 3. And so you install a secondary coverage that takes away the weaknesses on the seams, the weakness to 4 verts, and takes away the weakness to the horizontal spread under the horizontal stretch underneath. And so that means maybe a cover 2. It means maybe which is usually not my choice. It means maybe a cover 4 that takes away the 4 verts threat, but it doesn't take away the horizontal stretch underneath. I like cover 1 because I feel like it does a pretty good job against both. It's not foolproof, but it does a pretty good job. So as we start to expand the package, it's about looking for weaknesses first before you do anything else, and just moving those weaknesses. When you move your weaknesses, what happens? Like if you become strong in another place, you open up a weakness somewhere else. So just be aware of that. There's not, if there was a fix all, we'd all be running it.
I really think that once you start to look to build out your defensive playbook, Joe, you mentioned this maybe 4, 5, 10 episodes ago. I don't know. You talked about how this year on offense, you're kind of going back to the basics, right? You've graduated some kids. You don't have the same personnel. And so the offense had evolved to fit what they could do, but now it's got to come back to the base and re-evolve into something else. And I think that's very important, even on defense, is understanding that the exact same build out isn't going to work. The same evolution that you've gotten to isn't going to work with the kid you have this year if they aren't the exact same 11 kids you had last year. So when you're talking weaknesses in your scheme, absolutely, I think you need to carry, obviously a off front and off coverage, a blitz package. But I think you also have to pay attention to where is my new weakness in personnel. So, we used to, I think we even have a couple episodes about hiding kids or covering up a kid. I don't even think that way as much anymore. I'm not worried about trying to hide a kid. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not asking someone to do something they can't do, whether it's mentally or physically. So when you start building out that playbook, you may find that you have a whole bunch of the same stuff or attacks, blitzes, stunts coming from the same area because that's the kid that can do all that stuff. So maybe your off front is the same front, but you're just moving him around because hey, if he's your right defensive end and their left tackle is really, really good this week, I need to move him for a matchup. So that's where I start thinking about how can I alter what we do really well with that best 11 on the field mentality, but then also evolving my script or my system to fit the guys that I have this year. And so, we've talked about free safety is where you put your best guy. And for a lot of schools, that's where your best defender needs to be. So maybe some years he is that linebacker at 10 yards. Some years he's your coverage dude. So, your defense is going to have to change, and you need to be able to make sure that your system can cover down on whatever they're good at, and then build around them. Like you've been saying. So maybe you are just going to be absolutely outstanding up front. You've just got 3 absolute anchors. It doesn't matter. 1 can't block me, 2 can't move me kids, right? And so you can do a lot more stuff with your secondary players to get them moving around and just let those anchors do their job. Or maybe you have a backer who's, can fit gaps faster. He can run things down. He can play sideline to sideline. Great. Then maybe you need to move the defense, the defensive line around just to open lanes for him and just let him go to work. So I just figure out what it is you need to do and build out for your guys. Last question here. How do you pick the extra things to carry? And then you talked about expansion. What is that landmark for expansion? When is it time for us to start adding the extra thing?
Well, there's the issue of weaknesses, and so we've kind of gone with that first, and that's just taking away what we talk about in the defensive play caller system. We talk about from a defensive standpoint is asking the questions, and that's essentially what we're doing is we're saying, all right, if you want to run off tackle, I'm going to tweak that slant there or blitz there, and knowing that that's going to open up something else behind it, and those things are really just adjustments to the offense. So your base fronts that you have, your base stunts, your base blitzes, your base, 2 coverages that complement, a base coverage and a complementary coverage. Those things are number one. Those things always generally work with your core underlying principles, your run fits. They change some of your ASCA, but not a ton. Doesn't change how you play the game. Really, it just gives slightly different looks and strengthens up one area and weakens another. Where you go from there is you go from just kind of casually asking questions to getting up in their face and the questions get harder now, which is this is when we bring in exotic blitzes. This is when we bring in more of a numbers. And so what we talk about is aggressive. Aggressive calls change the numbers in some way significantly. If I just am lining up in a slightly different front or a different look, or even if I'm lining up in a different, if I'm lining up in a 3-3 instead of a 4-2, I'm not changing the numbers. If I blitz 1 linebacker, it's now a 4-man rush. Well, I was in a 4-man rush before. I'm hitting the same gaps. It's not more aggressive. It's just a different look. So we talk about those. We have our base call or calls. Then we have our movement calls, which are level 2. That will also include simple things like simple disguises and defensive line stunts and stuff. Level 3 is aggressive, and that's where you start to expand the package. And where you get to a point where, honestly, I think that you can get to a pretty high level being very good at the basics. You can get to a pretty high level being very good at the basics. You can also stay at a very low level by not being good at the basics, but having a lot of aggressive calls with no rhyme or reason, no thought behind them, and just blitzing yourself out of plays and being out of position and, not knowing how to run them and all that sort of stuff. So you need to really have the base, spill, force, alley, stay in coverage in our rules down. And you need to be doing a good job of using your different little change ups and basic, change up front stunt blitz coverage first. Then you can start to go for home runs, right? You can start to go for the kill. We know that a big determinant of that we see, and I don't know, these numbers are always like the team with the most explosive plays wins 80% of the time. Well, yeah, the team with the better team has more explosive plays too. The better team has more tackles for a loss, but they are momentum changers. They are potential for takeaways. They are potential for big plays and game changing plays. And so, if I were in a situation where I had 2 good defenses, right, and we're in a 7-7 slobber knocker, well, at some point, I want to throw a haymaker. And if you can't get into a 7-7 slobber knocker with somebody, you don't need haymakers. But if you can, that's when we start to go, here's where I dial up the exotics. Here's where I dial up the fire zones. Here's where I dial up the 6-man pressures. Here's where I dial up the double A gap crossfire. And I have a reason and a logic behind why I want to blitz in that area, why I want to add numbers to that area, and I have a reason and a logic as to why I want to do it right now. This is the opportunity. This is the time. This is the chance. This is when we need the big play. This is when, the same reason I run the trick play. And obviously you run a lot more exotics than you run, quote unquote trick plays on offense. But that's when I think you start to look for them is, when do I need to expand the defense we've gotten good at hanging in there with the good teams. Let's change the game now.
Yeah, I almost wonder if it isn't there has to be like a level of success, right? If you're and kind of in some of the stuff you were saying, you really alluded to this, but you don't need to just go out and add complexity because your bases aren't working. You need to get back to fix those basics, and maybe your system isn't sound, right? So that expansion, I don't know that it's a number of wins per season or if it's because at some point you're being really successful in your base. Why the heck would you change it too, right? Like, so that's what you said right at your last statement. I really liked with that. We're really hanging in there with the teams that are better than us, but we're still giving them a run for their money. Now let's add that little complexity. You told me a couple of years ago, if they're simple, beat them with complexity. If they're complex, beat them by being simple, right? And I think that might be one. A lot of us smaller schools, you're going to see a lot of simple offense, right? You're going to see a ton of just very simple gap scheme offense out of 11, 12, 21 personnel. Fit that simplicity as well as you can in your base, and now you can add that next layer. And so I think that's a great way to put that. When you're hanging in there with the big dogs, but you can't quite get over the hill, now it's time to change what they're getting to see. So I think that's a great one.
Right. Yeah, and I think if you're talking about a team that is, 1-9, like, do you need an exotic package? That's probably just going to get you beat faster. Now there are cases where you have a team that, like you talked about, a dynamic player, and I'm just going to bring him from all over the place, and like we're not good enough. The other 10 aren't good enough to stop anybody, but I'm putting together a package for the one who is, to try to stop people. Now, I might also be better off just putting him in the middle of the field and saying, look, he's going to, stop everything. But you might have a guy that's just dynamic in that way. I've had kids who weren't a free safety, but if you put him down as a blitzing, as a weekend rusher, then they were a game changer. And I don't even consider that a change up or anything. That's just personnelling. But if you're talking 1-9, there's probably 2 or 3 teams, and very few coaches have told me differently. They've told me almost every 1-9 team. I'm using 1-9 as an example. This goes for 0-10, most 0-10, almost every 1-9, 2-8, and into 3-7. Almost universally, you have some good players. Your coaching has not gotten everything out of them. You don't have great players, because if you had great players, you'd be 6-4 and coaching them down to nothing, right? They should be 10-0, but you made them 6-4. You have good players who could be, if you got everything out of them, 6-4, 7-3, and then we'll work from there. But you're not getting that across. You're not getting everything you can out of them. Well, let's be real simple until we get to that area, right? And of course, we're talking record, but as you know, Daniel, like it does, if you're giving up 10 points a game and you're scoring 9, don't change your defense because of that. I mean, maybe throw a haymaker to give yourself a chance, but you certainly don't change the whole structure of it. It's just, so it's not the record, but the defense is hanging in there. Once your defense is hanging in there, and now you're a competitive football team, and you need to get a little bit more. That's where it comes in. It's not a record thing, but universally with the 1-9, 2-8 teams that I've worked with, talking high school schedules, that's been the best answer, is let's get real simple and chunk all this other stuff for a little bit. And maybe next year we can get fancy.
I think there's also you got to look at your schedule a little bit. We talked on a previous episode before as well, like picking your base defense. Like, what are you trying to defend, right? And so there could be a situation you might play a zone read team week 1. And you know what? I'm a big proponent of taking 3 ways to stop everything. So my playbook for zone read might need to expand to stop that on week 1. But that also might mean, hey, everyone else is going to stay super, super simple here, right? We're just going to put in some very base stunts, blitzes, some calls, and you talked about echo and some of these other things earlier too. Specifically to stop that offense. That I don't think you can discount that. You can't take that away and say, well, nope, Joe and Daniel said we need to run our base for weeks 1 through 3 until we win a game. That's not what I'm saying at all. There's still going to be times you need to expand to stop a certain offense. And so your opponent can dictate a little bit of that schedule. I got my defensive coordinator into that at spring ball when we had some trips and some quads and some empties that are just super simple sets for us because we use a lot of tags. So it's a base formation with a tag that gets us into empty. And he was like, well, I wasn't really ready to stop empty yet, but you've kind of accelerated my install schedule. So that's going to happen to you as well. So but be ready for that by keeping everything else locked into their bases before you start taking away your own weaknesses and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm by no means am I saying that a high school varsity football team should go out there with base, nothing else. That's not. But again, if you're not at a certain level, you need to master that base defense before worrying about really blowing it out. Like, have some little basic blitzes and front changes and stuff that take away some weaknesses. I always recommend having a secondary coverage. I always recommend having some front, some basic front adjustments, not necessarily for a 3-3 or a 3-4, because you have your slants. You can slant and pinch. If I were a 4-2, though, I have to do it a little bit different. And so I always have different, slightly different front looks, the Indy look, double two eyes, things like that. That I always recommend that you have available to you. Base blitzes, there's no reason not to have them. Kids usually like them. But beyond that, which is the basic package, you can pretty much create everything you want there. Get good at that first. Just get good at that first. Get really good at it.
Absolutely. Well, man, I think we checked all the boxes tonight. Knocked this one out of the park, per usual. Let's pay the bills one more time and get out of here.
Yeah, you can check out joedanielfootball.com/rules. Get 40 Coach Simple rules for football coaches who want to win games. It's a free download. All you got to do is enter your email address to get that PDF. It is, again, just go to joedanielfootball.com/rules to get that download now, because I don't know how much longer it's going to be up there. I keep saying that, but
it's okay. We'll just keep saying it. What sales are opening and closing this coming out the first full week of August? So August 8th, I believe.
No idea. I think Game Film Masterclass is coming out later this month, but that's all I know.
If you don't have the emails yet, get over to joedanielfootball.com, get us your email address, and then you'll know exactly what's going on sale, because you'll get an email. Social media, you can find me on Twitter /X at Coach Chambo OK. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. And the Patreon's doing pretty well. It's been a lot of fun talking ball on Patreon. So jump over to patreon.com/ChamberlainFootballConsulting and sign up. There's several tiers there. Once again, I've got out of the classroom. I'm going to try to just football this fall. And so you can help a starving old coach that's young at the game not starve. Patreon.com. Joe, where can we find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Football Info. You can find me on Instagram at Joe Daniel Football, on TikTok at Joe Daniel Football, Facebook, facebook.com/Joe Daniel Football. Email is joe@joedanielfootball.com. I do not I'm not going to answer your questions by email, your football questions. Probably, we do that on our membership site, and I barely keep up with that. So, but if you have questions about the website or anything like that, or if you want to get on a sponsorship or whatever, those kinds of things, then do email me, joe@joedanielfootball.com. Don't send important stuff to Twitter. I'm not going to see it for a long time.
There you go. Podcast is at the FBCP on Twitter /X. If this is your first time listening to the Football Coaching Podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can find us on your favorite podcatcher. Spotify and Apple Podcasts can be the biggest two there. If you've been listening for a while, especially on those two, please leave us a review. We like 5 stars. If it's lower than that, give us a shout. Let us know why. See if it's something we can solve and earn that 5-star review. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Coaching Podcast. Remember, coach simple, play fast, win.